Good morning and welcome to the first rock climbing adventure of 2024. I am at Red Rocks right now, just outside of Las Vegas. I met up with Masha, so the band is back together and we're going to be doing some multi-pitch trad and I'm psyched. The route today is going to be the Purblind Pillar at the White Rock Spring area. 6 pitches, 5/8, really looking forward to it. Just got to the base. There is nobody in front of us, which is super rad. Can't wait to get after it.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to another one of mine and Masha's multi-pitch climbing adventures. Masha was in Red Rocks as part of an extended trip with some people that I didn't know. I was in Las Vegas for the weekend for a bachelor party, and I couldn't pass up the opportunity to climb with one of my favorite climbing partners, so we both ditched our respective groups and met up and had a great day. We chose Purblind Pillar because we wanted a route that had a good reputation for high quality climbing that also wasn't going to be crowded and wasn't going to be too long. The first pitch is a pretty nice intro, minus one section where it gets a little weird. You start off doing some very easy moves up some big rock steps, followed by some very mellow face climbing that's just classic Red Rocks. You're protecting a bomber crack while doing some great sort of crimpy, thin face moves on the surrounding varnish, which is always fun. Eventually toward the middle, some of the better, more varnished holds start to disappear and you get forced into using the crack. Eventually this crack gets a little wide and it gets a little weird for a move or two. I couldn't quite decide if I was kind of trying to chimney or off width or hand jam, and I tried all sorts of things. At one point I ended up buried pretty deep in the crack with a backpack on, which is never really where you want to be, and I determined that chimneying was probably not the answer, so I kind of stayed a little outside, but did use my shoulder and back in a few places just to take some weight off. Eventually the wide section starts to mellow out and you are greeted with some more beautiful crack face climbing depending on whatever you want to do before you get to the first belay ledge. The anchor for the first pitch is nice because some people have left some slings through a couple of thread throughs, so you don't need to make a classic 3-piece anchor. You can clip that as one piece and do whatever else you need. Makes it fast and easy. Masha then geared up to take the lead for pitch 2, which is one of the two 5/8 pitches on this route. Pitch 2 started out with a wonderful lie-back crack system that protected really well and was super mellow before you eventually traverse out on the face where things start to get a little interesting. The face traverse is some friction climbing and is considered by many people to be the crux of the entire route. You need to do a very delicate move that commits you to this dish. That's a very good hold, but once you're committed onto the face, then you can actually clip the first bolt. Once you're doing that, you continue to move right on some very slopey hands and some very slopey feet. What made this part really tricky was that while the holds were okay when you were well below them, as slopers are, as you tried to actually pull up and get higher on them, the holds got really, really bad. So you were feeling really, really insecure, stepping up into the unknown on hands and feet that you didn't know if they would hold, kind of reaching around, frantically trying to find something. You can use some slab techniques, some balance, some finesse to make it feel a little more manageable. Eventually you will get to a kind of low angle arête, and once you pull yourself around that corner, you have a couple more feet of easy climbing before you get to the bolts of the pitch 2 anchor. Next up, it was my turn to lead pitch 3. You start off on that big belay ledge of the second pitch where you traverse into a very obvious gully on some beautiful, really big huecos, almost reminded me of Smith Rock. Based upon some of the comments I read, I was a little worried that route finding was going to be a challenge here, but that was absolutely not the case. When you're climbing a 5/8, you take the line of least resistance, and if that involves a little bit of traversing, dancing around to do that, that's what you do, and it's always going to treat you well. But I digress. Once you get into the crack gully, then you climb that crack for a little ways, keeping an eye out on your right looking for some bolts. When you get to the bolts, you are then going to traverse across the face before you connect to another crack system. The traverse was very much a traverse. I left the crack, stepped on the face, clipped the bolt, and then stayed exactly level for about 10 feet before I got to some other beautiful face holds that let me ascend once again. There are 2 bolts on this traverse. They're placed in a very good location. I would just recommend going hard right once you clip that first one. Look at this positioning. This traverse was rad. Being up a couple 100 feet above the ground, doing some thin sort of balancy moves, definitely kept you on your toes. This was certainly a highlight of this route.
Yeah, this is not a ton of chalk, but it's pretty easy. Yeah, this is fine. This is fine. Dude, this is why we come to Red Rocks. These like plates. Oh, we love the varnish.
And then you are in a second crack. The second crack is another great feature that protects really well, and then you end at the famous elephant trunk belay that you need to sling. I was surprised at how wide this elephant trunk actually was, and it was a little challenging to sling. I have a 20-foot cordelette that's double barrel knotted with a little bit of tail on either side like you're supposed to have, and it just made it around. Then it was Masha's turn to take the lead for pitch 4, which has a little bit of wide weirdness at the start. In all honesty, as chimneys go, this really isn't too bad. There are plenty of features. You don't have to necessarily do a ton of chimneying. It's Red Rocks. It's graded soft. There are features. It really wasn't that big of a deal. The one thing I think that would make this a little interesting is protecting it would be challenging. There are some comments on Mountain Project saying a 4 would fit. My recollection looking up there was that maybe you could get a 4. It would just be really, really deep in, be a pain to place, be a pain to remove. Masha, being the champion that she is, actually didn't place anything, as you might be able to tell, and just grunted through the moves, which are 5-7 chimney, but Red Rocks 5-7 chimney. She was saying the whole time that there are plenty of good features, and I'm happy to report that when I got up there, I found the same thing. Doing the moves really weren't as bad as I was expecting. As you can probably see, there's plenty of places to put my feet, plenty of places to put my hands. I was using my back briefly against the wall, but that was really only for about one move.
What am I doing?
Once this rolls over, the rest of the pitch is pretty cruiser. You are back to near vertical sort of face crack climbing where you're protecting the crack, climbing the face. It started getting really fun at this point. We were up 4 pitches. The position was spectacular. We had nobody behind us. We were just kind of cruising, loving life.
This is funky. Nice.
I'm still in that lead.
Yeah, that was a great lead.
Like, I felt like really gonna get in there.
Hanging out on the pitch 5 belay ledge. This is plush and beautiful. Looking out at the Calico Hills. I can see the kind of leopardy rock on the far right at the first pullout, and then the red rock in the second pullout in the middle before it becomes the white stuff of the third pullout. Absolutely beautiful. Love being here.
Yeah.
Your fingers will fit in here.
Now it was my turn to take my final lead on pitch 5. This is another long pitch that is rated at 5.8 and it's very enjoyable. Right off the belay ledge, you have a bolt to protect the initial moves because they were very thin. Masha and I were arguing back and forth about whether it would actually take small nuts or not. I don't think it would. If you ever climb this route, please let me know in the comments. But these moves are really fun. You're going up this very thin sort of seam type thing. The feet are all those really cool red iron hemispherical protrusions that you get in some areas, which are very unique to Red Rocks. And then after about 15-20 feet of the thinner stuff, it eases tremendously. The feet get really big, you're kind of lie backing. I'd say it's maybe 5-6 for about 100 feet. And then eventually it's gonna roll over into below 5th class, probably easy 4th. The tricky thing here was actually finding the location of where to build a belay. You end up walking up this easy ramp that goes from about 5-6 to 4th class, as I mentioned, but then you actually need to cut right at some point and look for a buttress that is going to take you to the top. I got suckered too far left following the gully on this pitch. This was probably our least efficient moment of the day as I was really lost and I didn't want to get off route. So I spent a minute or two looking at the photos I had of the guidebook in my phone and then eventually was able to discern what the buttress was on the right, and I moved over and was able to build a belay so Masha could come up.
I'm hanging out right now at the top of pitch 5. Just kind of want to show you what this looked like. So I wanted to keep climbing up this directly in front of you, but that is not the way to go. The correct way to go is actually go to the right. This is the quote-unquote bushy crack that both the guidebook and Mountain Project mentioned. This is your line. Do not go over that way. Don't know what's over there.
And finally, it was Masha's turn to bring us home on pitch 6, which is the longest at about 200 feet and goes at a modest 5.6. This pitch is really cool. You start off with some face climbing that's pretty vertical and actually looks a little challenging, but it is very chill and very true to that 5.6 grade. There are 2 bolts that protect this part of the route. I really enjoyed this part of the route. I'm not the biggest crack climber. I love the face climbing. However, Masha kind of wished it was just a splitter crack because that is where she feels the most confident and the most secure. Either way, she danced right up these face moves, which were really enjoyable. After that vertical face, you kind of roll over to the right and you are on some low angle terrain. You could plug a couple pieces of gear here. We really didn't plug very many because it was so easy. And then you roll over and you are at the top. I would honestly say this route is 90% as good as Birdland, but with maybe 5% of the crowds, and I would definitely recommend it. I had climbed Birdland with Masha on a previous trip, and that is the classic Red Rocks 5.7 plus that you do when the weather's okay because it gets really good sun exposure. While Birdland is a super classic route worthy of all 4 stars and we had a great time, the crowds certainly deter from the experience. We got there, the line was super deep, we were waiting, you had people behind you, people in front of you. Fortunately, everybody was very nice. We made a lot of very good friends that day, but every single belay was overcrowded and it was really just a waiting game of, is the person in front of me going slow, going fast? When do I actually climb? Is the belay above me now empty enough that there's actually going to be room for my gear? It was a bit of a logistics fest and not a very pure experience. This route, we heard a couple people next door climbing the caverns and a couple of the other routes, but we really just heard people saying on belay, and we had this whole route to ourselves and it was a great experience. So if you're looking for something that's about the grade of Birdland but isn't going to have the crowds, highly recommend.
Yeehaw! We just topped out the Purblind Pillar. This is glorious. Gonna have a little lunch, a lot of cool rock formations. Yeah, and looking towards Red Rock, Calico Hills once again. You can see the strip in the background, and then that's our parking area and the trail that we came down this morning. This is an amazing place. The rock is beautiful, the climbing is incredibly high quality. Love being in the desert, love how close it is to civilization. Red Rocks is amazing and you should come here. So the top of the route is through those trees. We followed a couple of the stacks of rocks, and I believe this is the descent gully. Got another rock stack there and there. Let's see what we're about to get into. Still coming down the gully, we are dropping fast. We did not find any rappel anchors and did not do any rappels. It's steep, it's a little technical. It's not gonna make it in my pantheon of horrendous gully descents, however. We are out of the gully and back on the main trail. Got a little bit of uphill to get to the parking lot, but we should be there pretty soon. So we are back to the main trail and it's gonna be a short little slog to the car, so I think I'm gonna sign off right now. Purblind Pillar was a great route. I would highly recommend it. Honestly, I would say 95% as fun as Birdland. Definitely worth 3.5 stars. I wouldn't disagree with 4. And there was nobody on it. There were 2 parties, myself, Masha, and one other group. No lines, no nonsense. Get sun, get shade, everything. It was wonderful. What did you think?
Oh, I loved it. It was awesome.
I'm glad.
Go climb it.
Yeah. Would definitely recommend climbing, and the fact that it gets sun in the morning, shade in the afternoon, you can kind of do it, you know, a little more months of the year than you probably could some other routes. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit that subscribe button if you're still with me. I got a lot of cool adventure content coming your way, rock climbing, hiking, peak bagging, you name it, and I will see you on another adventure.